Here to discuss all of this and more is America's accountant Dan Geltrude. Dan, thank you so much for being here. It was quite the trade-off that Musk made when he went over to Twitter. Tesla definitely took a massive hit. They look to be recovering now, have been outperforming the stock market over the past month or so. Do you agree with Berenberg that now might be a good time to look into investing in Tesla?
Well, Addison, I'm not going to give any specific advice on investing here, but if we look at Tesla, certainly there's a lot of experts calling it a buy now, which would lend you to think that many people think that the stock is not going to go any lower. Obviously, the whole point to investing is to buy low, sell high. Now, I think there was too much made of Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter in terms of it was distracting him from Tesla. I personally never believed that. I think that he was more than capable of handling both, and people were just getting caught up with his tweets and other things. I think he knows that Tesla is what butters his bread. That's where his net worth lies. And I think that's his priority. And I would anticipate that Tesla is going to be around for a long time into the future and is going to have staying power.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting to see where it all goes. Now, I want to switch gears and talk about the debt ceiling, Dan. This is sort of the big economic news that's overshadowing everything else happening in the economy right now. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy was on NBC's Meet the Press talking about potential negotiations with Joe Biden for the debt ceiling, and he brought up a great point about old Uncle Joe. I want to play it for our audience.
But do you have any indication that the president is willing to discuss both lifting the debt ceiling and the issue of future spending?
Well, if he's changed his mind from his whole time in the Senate and vice president before, I mean, he literally led the talks in 2011 and he praised having those talks. This is what he's always done in the past.
I have had the great honor of spending hours and hours and hours, and you've covered my negotiating the debt limit and other things with the leaders of the Republican Party.
So he had gone from, Dan, several years ago to bragging about negotiations, bragging about talks, debt ceiling talks, to now saying there's not going to be any negotiation. Why do you think that is? Could it have anything to do with the fact that now he has has all the power?
Well, I think it has everything to do with basic hypocrisy in politics. Look, Joe Biden knows darn well that he is going to have to be part of the negotiations. And negotiations there must be, because no one side here can take an absolute position because there's simply too much on the line. You cannot have the United States defaulting on its payments. I mean, that just can't happen. So the question becomes, well, who gives what between now and June when we're set to actually run out of money? Now, keep in mind, we hit our borrowing max last week, but now we're just whittling down what cash we have for probably another 5 months or so until we're out. So between now and that time, we have to figure out how to get this, Addison, borrow more money. Not that that's great news, but certainly it's better news than the U.S. defaulting on its obligations.
And how do you think negotiations are going to go? Obviously, it's going to be very contentious because right now Republicans are saying that they want to pull back spending, be as fiscally responsible as possible, and Democrats just saying, well, you know, we actually have the majority of the power in Washington, so let's just raise that debt ceiling, baby. Let's spend some more money. How do you foresee these negotiations playing out?
Well, they'll land somewhere in between. And look, the Republicans are, quite frankly, talking a good game, but they've done their fair share of spending as well. So it's not like they can come from a place of holier than thou, because they're not. What people don't seem to understand is the very basic concept of finances 101. You cannot spend more than you bring in. So if you're going to have tax cuts, which Republicans want, well, then you have to lower your spending in order to stay afloat. We don't do that. I mean, either side, you have Democrats that want to spend more and tax more, right? But they spend much more than we tax. And the Republicans who want to tax less, well, they still do their fair share of spending. So neither party is really fiscally responsible as far as I'm concerned. So again, the ending is just going to be, I can guarantee you, we're going to continue to borrow and spend.
The same old cycle. That's been the history of Washington. Dan Geltrude, America's Accountant, always great to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Addison.